Welcome to Pix 11, Facebook Live. The Mary Murphy Files has been on hiatus for the last couple of weeks because of the impeachment trials, but we're back tonight. And I have been busy over those 2 weeks telling a very sad story, and I want to show you a picture that I'm sure you've seen online and in the newspapers. This little boy's name was Thomas Valva. He was 8 years old when he froze to death in his father's house on Long Island. His body temperature was 76 degrees. And then a week after EMTs responded to the house in Center Moriches, the father, a New York City police officer, Michael Valva, was arrested, and so was his fiance, and they were charged with murder. I want to welcome my guest here tonight. We're going to talk about a very difficult subject.
Yes.
Kim Taylor is a speech pathologist, and if you've been following Thomas's story, you know that he was diagnosed with autism, and you came into his life very early. First, though, I want to show a scene from Thursday, Thomas's funeral, which was held at St. Elizabeth of Hungary Church out in Nassau County, Nassau, Suffolk border, actually. And there's his mother, Justina, and his two surviving brothers, and such a sad ceremony. And it brought out many strangers who never even met the family because they were so moved and horrified by what had happened to Thomas. And I know that you had come into his life when he was young. He was young, obviously, when he died, 8 years old, but you met him when he was about 2 years old, when he had been diagnosed with autism, and you were trying to help him learn to speak. So tell me what your first impression was of Thomas.
Well, first of all, let me tell you that I think it was meant that I would be Thomas's speech pathologist, speech therapist, because generally I only work with clients that are very close to my home. And this was a little bit out of the way, but I really did want to meet this family and try to work with this little boy. Mm-hmm. So I first went into the home. He was a little over 2 years old.
What struck you right away about Thomas?
He was just a very sweet boy who at first wouldn't look at me, but every once in a while would give me a fleeting glance. He was very interested.
How was he with his mother, Justina?
With his mom, very loving. Autistic children are normally a little bit standoffish. They're not generally not as interactive with people, but Thomas seemed to really love his mom and want to be held by her.
He wanted to be held by her.
He did.
So there was a good relationship there. There was a
Yes,
bond.
there was a bond, even that early.
And what were his first words? I know that was a very joyful moment for you and the mom.
It really was. Thomas, I tried very hard to get him to give me good eye contact and interact. And I tried to figure out lots of games and songs that he
But he
would
said
enjoy.
2 words, right?
He said 2 words. His first word was ball.
Ball.
And his second word was go. So
And the mom was happy about
the
that.
mom was thrilled. She was so excited that
I should mention that I found out about you and your work through the Daily Beast. You had done an
Yes.
interview with Michael Daly about
did.
this case. And
Yes.
I actually met Justina Valva a few days after her ex-husband was arrested, along with his fiance, and she welcomed me into her home. She showed me some of the paperwork, from 2 years ago, East Moriches School District, showing that there were problems and that there were suspicions of abuse in the ex-husband's household.
Right.
Let me play a little bit of sound from Justina at the wake last week,
Sure.
and also the bishop who said the mass.
Okay.
Extremely difficult time for me and my family. Tommy is watching over all of us. He's angel in heaven. Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for your heart. And God bless you all.
We have to do something about this. Another beautiful life was lost because of our human negligence. And in so many ways, I feel that we failed this little boy. System fell, or we as religious or social leaders, we failed him because we are the ones who are supposed to make change. We are the ones who are supposed to protect life.
And there's a lot of truth in what the bishop is saying. Why do you think repeatedly the system seems to fail?
I think there are probably a lot of reasons, but really no excuse. Justina, obviously reached out to many different agencies, many different people. Justina was not the only one. Teachers reached out.
Yes, there were, in fact, the headline of tonight's show, there were about 20 calls
Yes.
to the New York State Child Abuse Hotline, many of them from teachers out in Suffolk County.
Right.
And a lot of them were just sort of,
As educators,
erased.
as human beings, we all have it in us to protect those who cannot protect themselves. And I'm not surprised that that many people reached out. At the time that I was in the home, the dad was not around. He was working. So I was there during the day with just Justina. But I'm sure that the people that did see these things happening were, eager to try to protect this little boy.
Now, we do have footage of the father and the fiance who've been charged with murder. And what people are writing in about, and I think that's why this case has generated so much interest, is because the suspect is an NYPD transit officer. Terry Hargrove Taylor is writing, unfortunately, in this country, some police are elevated to a godlike status and often aren't held to account. The thin blue line, the blue wall is impenetrable. Ask any wife of a cop who has survived domestic abuse. And that is a legitimate point to bring up because police officers are perceived as powerful and they have contacts within the court system. And, nothing is proven yet, but there were a lot of signs there that something was very wrong.
Yes.
Both of the suspects have pleaded not guilty. So nothing's proven. But the fact is, the son came to school with a black eye one day, a year before he was killed. And the father apparently said, he told me it happened at recess. So there's always some kind of excuse. And it seems like we as adults accept the excuses.
Yes, it's very unfortunate, and this is what came of that, because no one really, the people that could have stood up did not.
And didn't want to believe, perhaps, that someone who is a law enforcement figure
Right.
could be potentially abusing their children
Right.
in a frigid garage. And you heard some of the comments that apparently came off that audio system in the house. Allegedly,
Yes.
the prosecutor said this in court, that, he was face planking the child and that the father said, boo-hoo, he's cold, was mocking the child. I mean, these are the allegations, and the defense lawyers have pleaded not guilty on behalf of their clients. But I want to play a piece that I did a few days after Officer Valva was arrested. I met Justina Valva, the ex-wife,
Yes.
and she told me a little bit about her journey and some of the documents she had gotten access to. So let's play that story.
My children were basically starved to death.
Justina Valva can't bring back her 8-year-old son, Thomas, a special needs student with mild autism, but she can demand accountability from the child welfare workers and judges who gave custody of her 3 sons to ex-husband Michael Valva and his girlfriend, Angela Polina.
What do you have to say for yourself?
Valva said her 10-year-old son was also forced into Michael Valva's freezing garage.
He had frostbite on his hands, on his legs.
The East Moriches School District had expressed concern about the 2 oldest boys in this letter sent in April 2018.
They were looking for food on the classroom floor, in the garbage. They were coming to school wearing diapers.
Angela Polina, a one-time hospital biller, also had 3 daughters living in the house. Gino Cali is dad to the youngest, who's now 8.
I would watch Angela physically abuse her twin girls before the boys were involved, before my daughter was even born. She would beat one of the girls. I would break it up. Then get threatened that she was going to call police.
Justina Valva has boxes of records in her Valley Stream home dealing with her divorce and family court cases. She posted audio on Twitter claiming her ex-husband, a transit cop, was brainwashing the children against her.
Mommy hits me.
Mommy hits me.
Mommy, don't touch me.
Justina Valva also claims these Chase Bank records show large sums of money going through her ex-husband's accounts in recent years and wonders where the cash came from on a cop's salary.
We're talking about the deposit ranging from $30,000 to $130,000 a month coming from unknown sources.
Now her 2 surviving sons are back with her.
The first breakfast was just heartbreaking because I saw my kids eating breakfast so fast. Anthony must have like 2 giant bowls of cereal. He kept asking, when is dinner? When is lunchtime? The damage was so severe. They're gonna need long-term therapy with a very good specialist.
That goes without saying, right?
Yes. You know, what strikes me the most about this is the huge contrast of what I saw in the household, which was such a loving household filled with not only love but toys and joy and lots of hugs and, you know, beautiful words all the time, and then a household where, you know, they're starved to death and, not fed and going to school in diapers. What a contrast.
Yeah, and it just makes you wonder, why did the authorities in Nassau County believe that Justina Valva was not fit to be a mom to these 3 children, her 3 sons? You're saying how loving she was and committed to getting them the services that they
Yes.
needed.
Yes.
And apparently, from what I'm reading, perhaps Officer Valva convinced some of the people in the Nassau County court system that his wife was unstable. You know,
That's what I've
someone
read.
was convinced.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I've read. And she really was not. I mean, she was an exceptional mom, and it's obvious in even these clips.
Now, a lot of people are watching tonight. A lot of people are commenting. Kristen Marie said, "My husband is an NYPD officer, and he loves his children more than you know. My husband is so disgusted over this." And then Robert Johnson is writing, "The system needs to be turned on its ear. Absolutely horrific. The folks that ignored this should be jailed." I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of
Yes.
blame to go around.
Yes, there does.
You know, but
seem
we
to
all
be.
really do, as the bishop said, have to be held accountable.
Of course.
Because these children are living in our midst.
Yes.
And I know the older brother used to go to school with his backpack soaked with urine.
Yes.
Because he would wet his bed, and so they made him sleep in the garage. It's just torture-like conditions.
It's really unbelievable. I mean, when you think about it, police officers are sworn to uphold, you know, not only the law, but to protect and serve. And police officers do that. This is an unusual case, you know, someone who obviously has major issues. And I mean, to do this to anybody but his own flesh and blood is pretty stunning.
And you heard in one of the pieces that I did that the father of one of the daughters that was living in the household,
Yes.
the fiancés had 3 daughters, and the father of the youngest girl said he saw her hitting the 2 older girls before his child was born.
Wow.
And so he felt some guilt because he felt, I saw this coming. I knew this would happen. One of my colleagues who works here with me, one of our web producers, Mark Sundstrom, is writing, came to school with a black eye from home, and he still remained in his father's custody for another year before he was killed, frozen to death. So wrong. He should have been protected and saved.
Yes, he should have been. The older boy lost a significant amount of weight in his father's care. I mean, all of these are obvious signs that there's something very wrong in that household, and it's really sad that it had to come to this.
Actually, you're going to be interested in this comment from Cheryl Ann Marble. "I really feel that when a child with special needs is part of a family court case, that professionals knowledgeable in their diagnosis should be automatically assigned to participate in the court proceedings." I think that makes a lot of sense.
That does make a lot of sense, and truthfully, I would have stood up for Justina Valva any day. She was an incredible mom.
I think what worked against her perhaps is that she did not have an attorney. She represented herself, something that she was still doing up to a day ago when I was last at her house. That may change, but as Kristen Marie is saying, you never go to court by yourself. You must have representation, and perhaps that's
Yes.
why Officer Valva got custody of the children.
Yeah, it would have helped, I think, if she had representation. But I mean, really, with all of the signs, you never know. Even with representation, she may not have been able to keep her sons.
Yeah. Someone here is writing, I'll sort of condense what he said, Bill DeGraw. "Serial killers have boundaries they won't cross. These people have no boundaries. Let them out of protective custody. The kids had no protection, and neither should they." So a lot of people are really sickened over this, still horrified, and so many people are talking about it and writing about it, but
Yes.
we've seen these stories before. I covered the Lisa Steinberg case more than 30 years ago.
Yeah, I
And
remember that case.
Yeah, and she was in a household where her father, who was really not her legally adoptive father, Joel Steinberg, he was a criminal defense attorney, and the mother figure in the household used to be an editor for Random House,
Wow.
very prestigious company, but they both were descending into drug use. The mother figure was getting beaten up to a pulp, and then this child was flung against a wall one night, according to the testimony in the case. Joel Steinberg got convicted of manslaughter, not murder, because the jury sort of came up with a compromise verdict. They felt that the woman was not paying any price criminally, so I don't think they felt that they could convict Joel Steinberg.
I remember that case, yes. And probably the difference here, even though both are horrific, is that Justina did everything she could, putting things out there on social media constantly, writing to people in power that could help her to save her boys.
And I think probably some people were perceiving her as maybe a little erratic because she was posting these videos and audio tapes on the web. But meanwhile, she was on the money.
It was a cry for help. It was the only cry for help she had. Yeah.
And now everyone is talking to her when it's too late. She's lost one of her sons.
Right.
The only positive we can see in this is that 2 boys have been saved.
Yes, 2 boys have been saved, and you and others are getting the story out so that hopefully this never happens again.
And what would you advise people in any community in this city or state or in this country, what would you advise people to be on the lookout for? And what should people do if their call doesn't work the first time? What should we do?
I think that as human beings, we need to make sure that we protect each other. We have to stand up for children. We have to stand up for each other and never let anything like this happen again. Justina has an outpouring of support. I went to the wake, and there were hundreds of people who have never even seen her or talked to her or ever met Thomas, but everybody is there surrounding her and trying to help her now. And I feel like as long as we keep children in mind and watch and report as soon as we see something that seems out of order, then children will be saved.
And well, there's Thomas again. And, the one really nice thing that we're seeing coming out of this are people in the communities out on Long Island are starting now to reach out to Justina and her 2 boys. I saw some pictures on Facebook. They were at some firehouses. They were playing with the fire hoses and they had the helmets on.
Beautiful.
And I would just like to end by showing Thomas's picture again because this really is about Thomas.
Yes.
And our only hope is, at this point, that by him giving his life, he will save many others.
Yes.
And I can't tell you how grateful I am to you, Kim Taylor, for coming on tonight and sharing your memories of Thomas and how he interacted with his mom and the love that you witnessed in that household.
Yes.
And I hope that the 2 boys will feel that love again and feel the nurturing warmth of their mom.
Yes.
And we'll see how this plays out in court.
I'm happy to be here. Happy to be a voice for Thomas now.
All right.
Thank you.
you, Kim Taylor.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And I thank our viewers for joining this evening and also for all your comments and for caring so much about this case because it really is important that we look at what happened here and try to prevent something like this in the future. We've said that many times before,
Yes.
but maybe we can save other children. Thanks for being here, and I'll be back next Monday night for Facebook Live. Have a good night.